friendly and LEED. And on the other side, I have all of this knowledge about purposeful arrangement of interior spaces. And putting this all together would be something, really fabulous, but maybe confusing. And so I separated them at the beginning, and I would offer green services to my clients or feng shui, classical feng shui services and design services on the other end. But what happened was there's a pretty famous journalist and who lives in Manhattan, and she asked me to come in, and she asked me to do feng shui for her apartment. And when I went to visit her and meet with the architects, I was walking around the space, and as we walked around and toured together, which often happens, people start telling their story. And she said to me, Deborah, I'm very sick, and nobody knows that. And my family does not have a history. I'm an athlete. I've always taken good care of my body. I believe it was caused by my environment. So please do feng shui for my new apartment. And I'm saying, feng shui, yes, that will support this person, and I can help her, but I really need to introduce her to the ideas of what are the products that you're using in your interior and how can that impact your health. And I realized I cannot separate all of this knowledge that I've accumulated. And the most holistic way to deal with an interior space is by blending both the eco and the chi together.
That is what I love about you, Deborah. And let me stop for a quick second here because I think there was a little bit of a glitch at the start. It was my fault. But I'm pretty sure that folks jumped into this in the middle of your speaking here. So
Okay.
what you're joining and what you're listening to right now is a hangout with the Green Spa Network. And today we're speaking with, my name is Paul Schmidt, excuse me, and I'm the Executive Director for the Green Spa Network. And I'm speaking to you from Wyoming, near Jackson Hole. And today I'm chatting with Debra Duneier, who's the owner-founder of EcoChi, which you just heard a little bit about, and we'll get back into the conversation here in a second. She's joining us from a beautiful corner of New York. And so we're just here hanging out and talking about energy, interior design, sustainability, and how that all blends and supports people really in vitality and well-being, which is what we're all here for. So thanks for letting me pause for that. So Deborah, that's what I love about you, and I'm, when I met you, and the best thing was to be able to put feng shui, LEED, and and psychology and all of that knowledge in one place. I've been frustrated in the past, at being able to look at my office or my house from feng shui point of view. Okay, that's one thing, and then look at it from a green point of view, and that's another. And I guess I'm encouraged. I don't know enough maybe about what you do, but I'm encouraged that there's somebody like you out there who can integrate all those things and really look at the person. Am I seeing that correctly? Is that a bit of what you do?
Oh yes, absolutely. And this blending is EcoChi is organic. It kind of breathes, and with every new concept that comes out, with new science and research and neuroscience, and every bit of information that we're able to grab from the past, even ancient times, and ancient ways of healing, and why things were set up and oriented in a specific way, whether it is feng shui or Vatsu Veda, whether it's Mayan culture or Native American Indian. There are so many ways that they just completely overlap, and one confirms the other, that we are all affected by the environments that we spend time in. Not only the green and sustainability, and is this a healthy material for me to be living with, but
Right.
also what am I looking at? And how does that affect how I feel? The decisions that I make. Do I feel more focused? Do I feel happier? Those are all things that can be designed into a space. I always say life is lived the way it's designed.
Let me just go off on a tangent here for a second.
Sure, sure, I love it.
I could talk. Certainly, I'm fascinated with how you would work with me or other things, but more interested maybe right now in talking about the energy and the philosophies behind it all. So what just came to mind is that I've been in a number of buildings that are LEED certified, and were built with that value and inside of that system. In particular, actually one that you and I shared some time at, I believe, when we were in Mexico City.
Right.
One of the evening events was done at a university facility that was LEED certified and impressive. But my question is, or my observation, and I'm interested in your opinion on this, is that from an energetic point of view, with that building in particular and others, I find an emptiness, or I don't want to put negative words on it, but I find,
Right.
in its best version, it might be a blank slate, but it occurs to me more like emptiness or a void or a lack of vibrancy. So I'm just wondering if you perceive that and have any ideas, or if I'm just crazy.
No, no, that's a really interesting question, and I'm going to take all the pressure off of you and say I was in a meeting, and I was sitting next to a gentleman who was actually from Energy Star, and when he heard about the work that we were doing, he said it's about time. Much like you, he was in a LEED Platinum building the day before, and he could not wait to get out of there.
Right.
The Pattern Mapping Institute did a study. And the study was LEED buildings. If you had a LEED building and then you had a LEED building that won an award for excellence in architecture, that it was beautiful, over time the beautiful building is the one that stayed greener. So imagine that this building is like a hug to you, that you're in. It's a feeling almost of love. You walk in and it's taking care of you and you're taking care of it. That is going to last a lot longer than if you have an energy efficient building, which of course is wonderful for the earth, but is not necessarily nourishing the people that spend time there. The greenness of the building over time dissipates because people are not taking care of it.
This is exciting me. It's tapping a nerve that I've been dwelling in a little bit lately, and that goes to just how just how unexciting the term sustainability can be. And I don't mean to, obviously I'm here with an organization that promotes sustainability, and so I would want to be generating enthusiasm around that idea. But, really, there's so many challenges to it, and I think we'll see if these connections hold up, but talking about the LEED approach to sustainability, it's very... and I'm projecting here because I haven't studied. I've looked a little bit at it, but I'm not an expert. It's very pragmatic, very much about the energy, very much about the resources and the measurements, and sustainability is that way in general as a term. The idea is the reason it's unappealing to me is sustaining seems like hanging on to something. It seems like a static stasis, just getting to a point where, okay, it's sustainable. Let's like hold our breath and everything will be good. It has that kind of energy to it, and I can see LEED fitting very, very specifically in with that kind of thing. But where I find the compelling work might need to be done is, and where the leading edge of sustainability is moving is much more towards the idea of regeneration and the idea of taking our place in the system, and instead of holding ourselves separately and saying, oh, we have to minimize our footprints and if we get to zero carbon, then great. To me, I don't think that'll ever work. And a lot of people feel that way as well now, I think, and so it's more about, hey, what can we bring back here? How can we participate in this system? But relative to this conversation, if I'm not confusing everybody yet, um, it's that energy. So a LEED building might be built with fantastic standards, but as we bring it into the space that GSN operates around well-being and vitality and oneness and abundance, LEED isn't going to do anything for that. Not like that's a problem, but then you have to build in that aesthetic beauty, that sensibility, and those other pieces where the energy comes alive, and that begins to really feed and fuel wellness. Um, so I'm
It,
not sure what I'm saying. Go ahead.
it's always so much fun to be with you.
I'm glad.
Let's just say that. Um, uh, yes, I'm lead trained, and my staff is lead trained, so we're very, very familiar. So when I first started the business,
I
I
hope
would
I'm not
walk.
offending you with
Oh, no, no,
not
no.
a judgment. Yeah.
But I would walk into a space and I would say, "Oh, this might be a really, good space to certify as lead." There were other objections, not just about the fact that maybe it might not be a warm environment, or people may not be able to necessarily focus there or be creative or feel optimistic, and all of these things that have a lot to do with energy. But they would push back and say, I'm not hiring a third party verification, and they're going to come in here and they're going to charge me, and LEED's going to charge me, and this is going to be, I just don't have it in the budget.
Right.
And that was also objections that would come up. And I think that really that's why I created the EcoChi certification. It was because I had clients that would say, no, 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 forget green. I mean, just like out and out. And I would go, no, 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 don't forget green. Let's do what we can, and let's tell the story. And so we would create 18 customized guidelines, which is unheard of in the certification world. But EcoChi is organic. And why should I make a whole bunch of rules and regulations that must be followed when tomorrow there might be something better? Or when this project may not be able to do that because they have budget limitations, or they're leasing the space and they have no control out, of how the energy is received. They have regional issues due to weather or something like that. And it was, well, let's come up with guidelines specific for this project, and let's help you get there to meet those guidelines. And once you meet those guidelines, let's certify you and take this property and create a brochure, create materials that explain to people who are spending time in your space what those conscious choices were.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're looking at is so much more than just a beautiful space, but it's a space that really thought about your experience, and the experience being very different when you're in a spa versus a restaurant versus an office.
Mm-hmm.
And those energies and the energies of the space need to be mapped out over a floor plan or a site plan to see what's going on there, what went on before, what is the history of that land. Were there Native American Indian wars? Was it a burial ground? What happened there? Because all of that residual energy kind of sticks, and you've got to work with what's there. If you ignore it, it's a really bad decision.
I'm getting shivers. I've spent time in my career as a consultant and done some development work with spas, and so I've got a closet over there full of blueprints and whatnot, and elevation
Right.
drawings and architectural drawings, and I just got really excited about imagining another layer on those blueprints for energy, or various layers for past, present, future energy intentions and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
It's always fun. The architectural drawings are fascinating from maybe more of that pragmatic kind of maybe lead sort of focus point of view. Um, but then, an architect will always create a wonderful little model with glue and toothpicks,
Right.
and or do their drawings, and put people in it and start to put energy and happenings and stuff in it, and trees and things. And I don't know. I'm resisting making a judgment there, but there's so many more layers and important layers to what you pay attention to in that design element that don't show up in those drawings or blueprints in the standard world at this point. But maybe they do. I mean, how do you work with that? How do you map the energy and express or align with your clients and their builders or whoever else is involved, designers, workers, around how you want to deliver on that energy?
It's a really interesting question, and quite the answer quite complicated. If we're working with a group or a team, I remember doing a project in Manhattan where I'm working with people that have been in construction in New York City for decades, and all of a sudden this EcoChi lady comes in and starts talking about energy and curving walls. And I remember the architect coming to me and laying out the plans, and he says to me, "Look, Deborah, architects love straight walls."
Yep.
And I'm saying, excuse my language, but that's a lot of bull. I
Yep.
mean, take a look at the best architects that ever were. Take a look at the churches in Rome and what you're going to find in places all over the world. There are curves, and energy likes curves because when you have sharp points pointing at you, it's called a cutting chi, and it's almost like rapid moving water in a way, if you can think of the energy like that, just coming right at you.
Mm-hmm.
And the curves will kind of just slow it down and create an atmosphere where people feel more comfortable.
I love
Uh,
that. You're giving me flashbacks to long conversations with the owner, the guy writing the check, and the builder, and the designer, and we're fighting for eggs, in the ceiling that are all curved, that have backlit, um, and the builder's going, well, that's going to cost $30,000 an egg, and the owner's going, we can't afford that, and the designer's going, but it has to be that way or it's not beautiful. And yeah, so
yeah,
value engineering comes into play all too often. Uh,
it, it's really interesting, Paul, because from my point of view, EcoChi is for everyone. Supportive environments are for everyone. I don't care where you live. I don't care if it's a hut somewhere. There are messages that you are receiving. Something I always say is, the advertising business is alive and well. It is out there, and they're making tons of money. And why are they making all this money? Because it works. And they are sending us messages everywhere. Our computers, our phones, in a theater, watching a ball game, wherever you are, there are messages. And they know how that influences us. So I say, what are the messages that you are sending to the people that spend time in your spaces? What are those messages? And many times the messages are opposite of what the goals are of the people who own and manage the properties. So it's about consciousness and knowing and understanding that every selection that is made makes a difference in the experience of the people who spend time there.
mhm. Oh gosh, all kinds of things going through my head. I'm Kate and Jessica and I, the GSN staff, were actually in a at the Cliff Lodge at Snowbird in Utah um, last week because we were there for a conference, and it's actually a building I used to work in, and it's an interesting space because the first word that comes to mind for most people is bunker, and we're talking about a 13-story building with 500-room hotel basically, and 3 restaurants and the standard amenities you'd find at a resort, and it's all cement and because of the environment and the avalanches and whatnot. So But oh gosh, I'm going to go down a rabbit hole. But it was built by an owner, a gentleman, Dick Bass, who's no longer with us, bless his heart. But he was one of those micromanaging kind of owners, and he's also a guy. And when I use that stereotype in this case, I'm talking about a guy who doesn't necessarily have um, really savvy design palette in his mind or skills. So it was a constant headache for us, to try and do beautiful things with a resort when he had a different color palette and a whole different idea in mind. But I'm going to drive towards something here with respect to spas and maybe some ideas that you might have for how spas, how spa directors and folks who work in those environments, again, with all those things, because they're not in control of so much, but little things that they might be able to do to improve the flow of energy in their space. So where I was headed is that one of the things that we did, and part of Dick Bass's vision that I really loved, he built this hotel in 1986. It opened in '86, and he at the last minute converted the entire top floor of one wing, top two floors actually, into a spa. It was designed as hotel rooms. Um, and so that conversion was interesting. But his vision very early, I mean 1986, to build a 25,000 square foot spa in a hotel in the U.S.
Wow.
was fairly unheard of. He got the influence from folks over in Europe where that was much more common already. Um, so it was actually a little bit of a struggle between that vision, which I was very attached to, and the folks who actually ran the resort had much more of a ski resort corporate mentality than a spa energetic mentality, um, which was a whole other story. But
Right.
in the 18 years that I worked with them, I did my best to try and channel that vision that Dick had for. He called it, we want to be the Canyon Ranch of Utah. He had those ideas. And so we would do clearings, before the season would start, and that would look like the staff going around and drumming in the space and using incense. And the incense became a problem. One of the, I forget who it was, authorities in the space came by. Who's smoking dope in the spa? Right? So we switched gears, and there's a place on the mountain, the beautiful mountain actually, where one can find small crystals, much like Herkimer diamonds from not too far away from where you are.
Mhm.
And so we shifted from the unappealing to some sage burning to crystals and started giving them with a little bit of ceremony, nothing too scary or formal, to our staff. And one year we ended up with crystals in the corners of every spot, every physical corner of the building, as well as in each of our treatment rooms. And we felt shifts in the energy that way. So I have my own ideas around that as an energy healer and whatnot. But I'm just curious, what do you think about what we were trying to do there, and how or why that worked, or and again, how can people who are in spas now elevate the energy in their spas in practical ways like that?
Well, it's really interesting, and kudos to you for for doing that kind of work so early on and being brave enough to just go forward and do that. How wonderful! There are so many ways of doing space clearings, and I feel like most probably the sage is clearing out the old energy, making room for the new, and there are so many different ceremonies that can be done. And your sage story is quite common. In Manhattan, I worked for Cochrane when I was in the real estate business, and Barbara Cochrane totally believed in this energy. And when sales were down and the brokers went home, she went through those offices with sage and ceremony and well, look where she is now. She's doing pretty good. So it worked. Um, Energetically, as you know, there's a lot of depth to it. There are lots of layers to it. And there are some things that are kind of basic and others that go deeper that really take a professional. So if we're looking at a spa and we want to see what's going on with the energy and then to kind of balance it to be optimal, we would go in and take a compass reading. We use a low pen compass. It's been used by feng shui masters for 5,000 years. It's the oldest form of feng shui. And to me, it makes the most sense, and it makes the most sense when you're also working with architects, because we can do energy mapping of what energies are flowing through that space, and almost like a horoscope, as you would have for a person, a date of birth, the date that the roof went on top of the building and it was built and finished, that year, that moment in time has an energy of its own as well and becomes part of the structure. So we analyze that and then lay a map, what I call energy map, on top of that plan. And you can see where earth energy is flowing through, and fire and metal and wood and water, and where those are optimal. And then after you see where that is coming from, all that energy and where it's going, to make a decision. Do you really want fire energy? Let's say you're in the mountains of Sedona and you're surrounded by fire. You know, that the red rock, fiery energy and high peaks, and so that there's lots of fire going on. And now you have a spa. Do you want to actually enhance that fire energy? People may start fighting or may having some passionate love affairs in the middle of the spa. I mean, it's going to raise that energy. And if that's what you want, yes, you do that. And if not, there's a balancing that goes on, maybe bringing some water energy in, or maybe bringing other energies in to get the results that you want. It's like a recipe. Mm-hmm. And the energy mapping that we do, when we lay that over, it's almost like a pizza pie. It's like slices. And these slices each relate not only to an energy, but a direction. In this hemisphere, every direction has a specific energy. So if you're on the southern side, that would be fire. If you're on the northern side, that would be water. So if the southern part of the property is being used to sleep, people are going to have a hard time sleeping or relaxing there because there's fire running through that. So, I mean, you're spending a lot of money on a building. If the building is there already and this is the layout and you're stuck with that, you're not changing it, then you need to change the energy to support the work that's being done there. So I think that's the most, the lay terms, and I think that most people understand that, oh yeah, sure, I walk into this side and it's really sunny most of the day. Well, that's your social area. Mm-hmm. You know, that would be a great place to have, socializing. Maybe it's a school or, part of the spa where you're giving, classes and those kinds of consultations. But if it's not, a feng shui practitioner can come in and change that. Now, the form school is very basic feng shui. And form school is like the tried and true foundation to all schools of feng shui. So here, there are simple, what we would call cures or remedies for a space that are very, very easy to do. In form school, you know that you're not ever going to build a staircase in front of a door, because energy is just never going to enter all of that space in an even way and really give it a fresh new start. In form school that where you position yourself in a room is extremely important. So you want to be in a power position, let's say in your office at the spa. You're running the spa and people come in to talk to you and you're working on deals and things that are very important. You never want to be in line with the door. You always want a wall behind you, which is the mountain position, the mountain energy of support.
Mhm.
And because you can see the door, you are empowered. So some of the office work that we've done, people are sitting, lots of people are sitting with their backs to the door and they're in a little cubicle. And I will tell you that you cannot focus when you're in that position because we are animals and we are leaving our backs completely vulnerable.
Mhm.
And in that case, you are never, ever, ever able to totally focus. It's unnatural. Um, the color red in feng shui is very, very lucky. It is fire energy, so you don't paint the whole room in a spa red necessarily, but bringing in that color brings success. Water is representation of abundance. And most people that know a little bit about feng shui will say, well, you know, I put a water fountain in my office, or I put a water fountain in my spa, or a waterfall. This means that lots of money is going to be coming in. It does have a lot to do with money. It represents money, but it also represents abundance in your life. I mean, you and I know it takes more than money to live and thrive and live a really fulfilled life. It's about abundance coming in, relationships, friends, family, health, all of those things kind of flowing, and water represents that. And for spas, that's perfect.
So finding I'm taking notes or looking forward to going back and listening to this. I think a lot of people look for those like easy to grasp things like, okay, red, I want more red, or no back to the door, kind of like black and white rules.
Right.
And I'm a little more familiar with that, but um, so you're introducing things to me that I want to chase down again. The compass thing. What was the
Mhm.
name of that again?
It's called a low pen compass.
Lopen,
Low, low, it's two words. So the spelling varies because it is Chinese, but it could be Lao and then PAN, Lopan,
oh,
or I usually spell it, I think,
what does it mean?
LOPAN. It's about direction and energy, of course.
So,
And so the Lopan compass is all about standing in the center of a space, facing in the right direction, and measuring where we use magnetic north as our basis for this compass reading. And
okay.
the reason why we use that is because magnetic north, I mean, that's what rules our lives, right? The tides, the moon, when you have animals that are hybrating or animals that are the geese are flying overhead, to go south, how do they know that? This is magnetic north pulling them. So it's kind of a nod to, we are directly affected by nature and we want to align with nature. So we use magnetic north in our readings.
It was a
Uh,
Lopen. Is a Lopen compass an actual like disc with a needle that spins around like I think of when I think of the word
yeah,
compass?
oh, I wish I had it here with me, but I'll be sure to bring it with me to Congress so
Sure.
that people can take a look at it. It is a round disc, and it's the one that I have is supported by a wooden base, and there are actually about 4 different rings around it on the bottom to adjust it with a little needle, and it tells you where you are really energetically because you face different directions in a space according to what's going on around it. Now we're really getting a little complicated here, but
Okay.
we look at the space. Let's say I go to your spa, and I walk in, and we study the space around what is going on around. And let's say your spa is positioned perfectly. You have the ocean on one side and you have a mountain on the other side. That would be perfection. And we would take a compass reading with the mountain to our back and the ocean in front of us, and that's how we take the reading. But let's say it's the opposite way around. We're measuring for energy, so we would have to flip that. And in places where there's no mountain and there's no water, like Manhattan, let's say, or any big city, we would have to have maybe the taller buildings behind us, and where the most traffic is, which would be a water energy, in front of us.
Hmm. Hmm.
Interesting stuff, right?
I know, and I just want to listen to you all day. The thoughts going through my head are really just what excites me is the wisdom and that sort of romantic maybe energy around the ancient tools and whatnot. It reminds me again of how remarkably separate from that kind of sensibility we've become, particularly in the West. I'll stop to be very careful and say I'm not here to call that a bad trend and something we need to reverse or do away with. I think it's much more into moving through things, and I think we're going in a direction, and it would behoove humanity, again, back to what I said earlier, to stop focusing on minimizing our impact and start participating in the system and making it great.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I agree, and
I guess is what I'm getting around to is these things can be boiled down to put red in and don't put your back to the door and leave your toilet seat closed and everything will be good. But to stop there or just treat it at that level is missing a whole lot of opportunity, and that's where, whether it's astrology or EcoChi or any number of other types of systems that need that sort of translation for our modern mind, or whatever you want to call it, that's where people like you come in, and all of a sudden, and very quickly, it's not so simple anymore.
No, it's not simple, but I think that there is a growing interest, and it really makes me think. What you're saying really makes me think about what's happened in our healthcare, and now spas are also walking into the medical world, and there's this incredible overlap. What an opportunity, from my point of view. What an opportunity, because we discovered the germ theory, and medicine changed.
Right.
Totally changed. Now, I'm not going to say that that's a bad thing. It's a wonderful thing. But what happened alongside with that was our interiors became sterile. Places where people heal or are supposed to heal have become sterile as well. Now, if you look back in ancient times, what happened in Greece? Where did people go when the Greek god of health would have people below them who were sick? Where did they go? People always went to nature. They always went to beautiful places to heal, and that's been taken away from us. And there was a study done in California in a small hospital, in one floor in the hospital, that everybody was sick with the same disease, and it was a study, so they had the same doctors taking care of everyone. They had the same nurses. Everything was the same. The rooms were identical to each other, all on the same floor. Half of the rooms faced a view of nature. The other half of the rooms faced the building next door. They were facing a brick wall. The people who had a view of nature needed half of the pain medication.
Wow.
And they went home at least 24 hours earlier. Why is that? Who needs so much pain medication when your body is creating morphine-like chemicals on its own, just being in natural beauty?
I'm seeing the conflict now. Now
Yeah.
the healers are opening the windows and the drug companies are putting up the walls.
Right.
Um, hey, so I just you're reminding me as well. One of my Google alerts threw me an article the other day about Humana, I believe. A healthcare insurance provider is now including apparently uh, some manner of mindfulness training as their options for more of a well-being approach. So that was one of the thoughts I actually had was, okay, so put yourself in a hospital and be mindful for a second. What's the first thing you're going to notice?
Well,
Sterile
may-
and sort of, um, cold and scary
yeah,
hospitals for people. They put me on edge. It's not. I don't like going there.
yeah. Who does? Doctors don't like going there. A
Right,
doctor will be the first person to tell you don't go to the hospital,
right,
you know.
right.
So there is a reason.
Um, all right. Oh, this is just so much fun and typical for these conversations. Here we are, and time is all of a sudden starting to really fly by. Um, your comment earlier about energy reminded me of and location and orientation of a property reminded me of one example here in Jackson, actually. One of the luxury properties here, the Amangani Hotel,
Hmm.
uh, Amanguchi, I like to call it, but Amangani Hotel um, is situated in of the most remarkable pieces of property in the Jackson Hole Valley, and it's difficult to find one that's unremarkable. That it's known for its beauty. I'm sure most of the people watching can picture, whether they've been here or not, a picture of the Grand Tetons in their mind. And it's one of those situations where oftentimes pictures like that, when you get to the real place, it's underwhelming. Jackson Hole is one of those things where it's everything you see in the pictures and more. And so the Amangani Hotel was built on a bluff with an unobstructed view of the Tetons.
Wow.
And so just incredible yang energy, just in your face. And the developer, I don't know who off the top of my head his name, but he didn't want that energy. He recognized that if he exposed his hotel and his condos um, to that, it would be out of control,
Right.
And so he built a hotel on the other side of the bluff, facing, in this case, more south. Um, and facing the Snake River Range, which is much more subtle and off in the distance, and much more the layers of views that you get, more of an ocean kind of energy. Um, and he did that on purpose. And as I was touring the property and talking to some of the folks around it, um, they said that that's one of the things that owners, or potential as they're selling their real estate, are like, well, why didn't you put it viewing the mountains? I want to see the mountains, and they have to go through that whole explanation the whole time, and um, I don't know why I'm sharing that. Just it's interesting to see how these kinds of energies have shown up. And that hotel was built, I'm going to say at least 30, 40 years ago. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, I definitely understand why a choice like that would be made, especially, I don't know, I'm not familiar with the layout, but where the rooms are, where people are going to rest, it would be much better to have that in the area where there is a view of water, or you have some of that water energy, as water energy is it's like the deepest part of the ocean. It's dark, and it is a place where people go when they're kind of going within. So if you're going to have a restful night's sleep, and if you're looking to kind of like calm things down from the fire around you, I definitely can understand why that would be a choice.
mhm.
Now, I also understand the real estate end of it, and developers saying, oh my God, look at these views, you know. So it would be nice to have some kind of combination. And also, something we didn't talk about yet, Paul, is that, different people have different energies, and different things are going to appeal to those energies. And over time, that also changes because every time has an energy. So it's great to have a little bit of both, or something that balances it all together.
So fascinating. So fascinating. Here's one for you.
Sure.
Uh, so we were talking about lead and feng shui and sort of as separate things, which is dangerous because nothing's separate. But to go with that for a second, do you feel that there's any inherent conflict or any area of overlap between I'm fighting with myself while I'm even saying it between lead and feng shui um, or is it more harmonious dance for you to consider and I might be completely off base here but to consider more from that lead point of view the resources and the construction and the materials and those types of energies and then you bring in the feng shui part for the energies that flow and do you work with those two systems? What am I trying to say? Do you work with those two systems um, collaboratively like that, or compatibly? You know, as two separate things, or do they overlap? And is there anywhere where lead is blowing it in terms of energy, or where feng shui just could never be sustainable in its construction? You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I think so. Well, I kind of see them working together. Um, Not saying that I agree with everything that Lead, promotes, and or the reasons why they promote them, but there are a lot of good. Look, they're the grandfather now of the green and sustainability movement, and I am grateful for that. So it doesn't mean that it can't be improved, and it doesn't mean that over time there may be something better that comes along. But it's really bad feng shui not to take care of the earth.
Right.
Very simply put, it is bad feng shui. As I remember, one of my masters that I studied with said to me, "You never give a microwave oven to someone for a wedding gift. Never, because you will have a lifetime of bad luck for that." So it is all about taking care. And I believe that if you are nurturing people, this is nurturing the earth and vice versa. Much like what you were saying at the beginning of this conversation, we are part of something bigger. Whatever it is your beliefs are, there is something bigger. And we are part of an ecosystem that has layers that we will never understand all of it. I have a friend of mine, her name is Edith Wiener, and she's pretty famous in the trends world. And I remember her saying, we have really come to a point where we understand so much about the human brain, but we don't know anything about the goo that's in there, right? And it's the same thing with the world, you know? And these intuitions, these strong senses that we've had since the world has begun, is all part of our DNA and who we are. And I think that there is a reason why when I studied, Mayan cultures and Native American Indian and Feng Shui and Vatsuvita, that there are so many similarities. How could that be? The beliefs are just expressed in a different way, but it's all about the human interaction with their spaces and the world.
I love that you focus on, you help me focus on my space, and this is where I spend my time, most of my time, and so I should bring a lot of consciousness to that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so as we're winding up here, I'm gonna cycle up a little bit here. So Congress, the GSN Congress is coming up in about 4 weeks here, 4 weeks from tomorrow, I guess, and so looking forward to seeing you there.
Same
Um,
here.
our event, yeah, and I'm excited because you're a first timer, and I'm really
Mm-hmm.
excited to see through your new eyes what that's like, and because it is a unique event. And one of the things that we really work at is common for event producers, but I think we have a little bit different approach or goal. And that's that age-old, how do you go to an event, you get super inspired, and you have all these great ideas, and then you get back to your life, your day-to-day, and, access to that enthusiasm, inspiration, and even the specifics of those ideas disappears or melts away very quickly. So I've taken a little bit different approach. Instead of focusing on how do we get all this value back home with you, to why don't we start by bringing all of you to the event, and let's have this event be a stopping place on your path. So we approach that with the words journey, and Congress is a journey, and to whatever extent you want to participate consciously or unconsciously, it'll happen that way in your life, like any journey. So, to you specifically, what would you recommend, or that people could do or bring to Congress or any event? If you're watching this and it's not about it's not about our event here in a few weeks, when people travel, how can they take that nurturing, healing, supportive energy, positive, vibrant energy that is them, from their space? How can they bring that along with them on a journey and have it survive, the airplane luggage and the transfers and the Uber ride and all that kind of stuff, and get to their hotel room and set that up as a place that supports them, where their life is there and they're not away from their life. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I actually wrote an article, it might have been a couple of years ago, maybe the Huffington Post, on traveling and bringing feng shui to your hotel room, or preparing for a meeting, and how to get to the meeting more energetic. If you would like me to share that with you, I will find it and you can make that available.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just remembering some of the tips that I had on there. Was a little while ago, but things that you can bring with you. I always bring my favorite piece of clothing. Okay, now you're going to know something really personal about me. My favorite piece of clothing is a zippered hoodie. I need nothing else but a zippered hoodie, and I am the happiest, coziest, most myself person. And whenever I travel, you can check my bag when I get there. There will be a zippered hooded, hoodie there, just sweatshirt waiting for me. So choose a piece of clothing that makes you feel most comfortable. It might be an old pair of slippers or whatever it is, and bring it along with you. Also, for electromagnetic fields, which we haven't spoken about yet this conversation, but that is these fields that are created by electronics and things that we're really surrounded with, is to be sure that you bring something like a scarf, something from home that's very beautiful, and bring that with you to cover your television set at night.
Got it.
And it also gives you something that reminds you of home when you look up. And to be sure that you keep your cell phone, if you're one of those people that has to have your cell phone on 24/7, to make sure that it's at least 5 feet away from where you're sleeping. Otherwise, you will not sleep.
Awesome. Well, Deborah, we've come to the end of a fun hour here. So much time. Yeah, it's neat because we do this.
Yeah.
This is actually a selfish endeavor. I just can't stand it. I want to talk to people, and it hopefully provide some value for other folks here. So I really do appreciate your time, and I'm even more excited now to see this compass as it comes to Congress and understand a little bit more just by being in the presence of it about some ancient wisdom that you dance with so beautifully. So thank you for all that.
And thank you. I'm looking forward to it so much.
Yeah. So with that, I'll go ahead and end this hangout. Thank everybody for being here and for taking the time to watch. I hope you gained some value out of this. And look for more. We will quite potentially have more materials, the links to past articles that we just talked about, and whatever comes out of Congress in a few weeks, we'll do our best to capture it and provide that for any kind of follow through here. So thank you so much, and have a great day, everybody.